Chapter 621. You can do it, Vaughn responded in an indifferent voice. Surprisingly, it wasn't Jean who was shocked by that response, but the legends. Deep down, they had hoped that Vaughn would intervene and mediate in this terrifying situation that was escalating to the extreme. Since the first clash between Jean and Ko, or rather, since the first conflict between Garmund and Ko, the legends had silently wished for Vaughn to step in. But Vaughn had not intervened even once in the affairs of the brothers, not even now, when things had come to this point. It was completely incomprehensible whether she was disappointed in Jean, disappointed in herself, or if there was another reason. If Vaughn had sided with Jean, the legends would have followed her without question. Even if she had punished the brothers who demanded a new validation test for the successor chosen directly by her, or if she had told them to consider Jin's words as her own. Why do you keep just watching? Is it because of the guilt from the last war? Are you trying to avoid making decisions now, thinking that the extinction of our race was due to your decision, Elder Sister Goddess of Battle? Even in such a crisis, when the brothers are so divided. Vaughn looked into Baba's eyes for a moment. Baba felt that her internal thoughts were exposed, so she felt embarrassed and wanted to express her frustration, but she didn't avoid Vaughn's gaze. If you can, Vaughn continued. Baba's pupils dilated at her words. After a few seconds with a lost look, she clenched her teeth as if her molars were about to break. Understood. As Vaughn and Lingling flew away, Jean briefly turned to look at Baba and the legends. You are very kind. Ko and you too. What? If you're going to gouge my eyes out or kill me, do you really need to announce it in advance? If you're confident, do it without making a fuss. Those actions only make you seem weak. Baba slowly nodded. Advice duly noted. The fight between Jean and Baba was the 65th. The revived tradition, which was once a beacon of hope, was now nearing its end, just like the relationship between Jean and the tribe. Although there were still some battles after the 65th, the legends practically considered the fight between them as the final confrontation of the Great Battle Kings tournament. Before that battle, the other battles held little importance to the legends. Jin's death was directly related to the fate of La Ferosa, the guilt of being a leader when the people perished. The legends, including Baba, speculated that the reason Vaughn hadn't intervened until now was due to that guilt. Most of the legends had similar thoughts. If Sister Baba kills Jean, our time will probably stop forever. Maybe the next heir of the Shadow Blade will never come. We were already doomed. No, that's for sure. Thanks to Sodaret, we only survived trapped in a dead world. Jean became our brother and showed us hope, but in the end, he abandoned us for trivial conflicts. He was not our brother from the beginning. Yes, from the beginning. We had to oppose when Sister Goddess of Battle asked for our opinion on the blood transfusion. If we had done that, we would have simply passed the Shadow Blade to him, and we wouldn't have faced this betrayal. Betrayal. The legends understood Jin's actions so far as a betrayal. It didn't seem reasonable to reach this extreme just because a few people demanded an additional verification. Anyway, it doesn't seem real. The fact that tonight might be our true end. In the midst of the gloom and anger among the legends, Baba had a determined and resolute look. Time passed cruelly fast. The legends entered the main hall with gloomy and angry faces, unlike what they usually did. Unlike usual, the sky of the main hall was dark. The legends suppressed the thunderous roars they used to let out whenever a match began. Even Ko, who had been bedridden since the 22nd battle, climbed to the main hall on Baba's back. Before starting the 65th battle, I want to say something to everyone. At Vaughn's words, the legend's eyes widened. Could it be? Is Sister Goddess of Battle trying to mediate now, even at this late hour? However, Baba's eyes remained unwavering even then. She had already made a decision. And at the next moment, Vaughn's words far exceeded everyone's expectations. If Sister Baba kills Brother Jean in this fight, La Ferosa's time will not come to a complete stop. Maybe it's because it was originally Brother Jin's chaos. Lingling, this little one can play the same role as Brother Jean. Is that really true, Sister Goddess of Battle? Lingling can play the same role as Jean. It's true. That's right. I've been feeling it since I accepted Lingling, but it became certain 2 days ago. Vaughn didn't give more details about how it was possible or what means were used to confirm it. Despite that, everyone could clearly understand that Vaughn's words were true. Then, even if Jean dies, our time won't end completely. Lingling is the first chaos, so maybe it's possible even more. To the extent that Elder Sister Goddess of Battle speaks with such conviction. The fate of La Ferosa, which only depended on Jean, now had a new alternative named Lingling. A heavy silence hung in the air. Except for Vaughn, the only one who maintained complete composure amidst this silence was Baba. Baba handed KO over to Garmund. Garmund scratched the back of his head and positioned KO to make him as comfortable as possible. "I'll be back." Baba slowly walked to the center of the main hall. Behind her were the 11 Battle Kings and 64 ordinary warriors. No one stood behind Jean, who approached from the other side. The 65th battle begins. Even though the battle had begun, Jean and Baba did not draw their swords for a while. However, the fighting spirit emanating from them weighed heavily on the entire hall. It's been just over 10 days, but not only has he recovered, he's become even stronger. The energy flowing from Jean was unusual. He was a completely different person from the one who lost to Lamora in the 54th match. "I can kill you if I can. I wondered why Elder Sister Goddess of Battle told me that. Do you understand now?" "A little. And I was also curious about one more thing. Why are you doing this to such an extent?" Swoosh! Baba's sword, Light, slowly came out of its sheath. Light was the sword used by Nana, her ancestor and former god of battle. As its name suggested, the blade shone with a dazzling brilliance. It was a trivial matter. This verification was neither unreasonable nor the wish of everyone. "But you turned your back on your brothers just for that." Jean also slowly drew his sword. The pale blade of Sigmund contrasted with the light. "We thought you'd be uneasy. We, who always provided unconditional support, must have seemed greedy at the moment when the situation changed in your eyes. It must have been an unexpected situation for you. Amusing. As soon as you had the hope of going outside and weren't even sure of it, you all revealed your true intentions. So I tried to provoke you a little, and in no time most of you conspired to take this sword from me. And you even suggested banishing me. A little? Is that all you have to say? That's the essence of what you call the concept of brothers. With just a few words, you divided into factions, rejected me, who had been recognized as a brother and inherited the sword after being chosen by the goddess of battle, and threatened me by talking about accidents. I felt disillusioned by your actions. Before stabbing Brother KO, no. Even after stabbing him. Did you ever think of having a conversation? I discovered that there are different kinds of brothers. What kind of conversation do we need? Although more effective control was possible, you forgave KO, who threatened me saying he could cause an accident because he was a brother, and yet you couldn't forgive me for stabbing KO because I wasn't a brother. Brother KO didn't shoot you after all. And the act of committing a deed and not committing it are never the same. You tried to kill your brother. I almost lost my eyes or head. But it's okay since KO didn't shoot me in the end. So, although I ended up stabbing KO, he didn't die. No one died. Besides, Brother KO intended to pressure you. So could he have had other intentions? Couldn't you have thought there might be a reason why I even stabbed KO? Elder Sister Bella's, Brother Garmund, and Elder Sister Rinpa and ordinary warriors visited your hospital room to ask about that. Indeed, they all came to see me and reprimanded me. Did the other tribe members from the opposite side do the same with KO? Baba couldn't answer. You don't understand the essence of the problem at all. As soon as an opportunity arises, your true intentions are subtly revealed. KO is a brother, and I was just a friendly outsider. You're being meticulous. Are you trying to justify stabbing your brother because you're upset? There's a limit. It's a difference in standards. If you want to prove you're right, stop talking and draw your sword. Now that Lingling is here, there's no reason to hesitate in dealing with me. Baba's eyes turned cold. Lingling, To begin with, the important issue wasn't whether we could go out or not. I hope you don't think the reason we've been enduring you all this time is because of that. 'Cause, as soon as she began to raise her aura, the entire main hall was instantly enveloped in blue lightning bolts. Let me tell you clearly why my brothers think I am the one to inherit the god of battle. Ninth Battle King's technique of the Legend's punishment. Baba charged at Jean like a blue spear, and Jean faced her head-on, wielding Sigmund. Finally, the end of this damned villain is in sight. As she thought so, Chapter 622. Bang! Upon receiving the blow, blood surged to Jin's chest. Jean had fought against all the other Battle Kings except Boris. Except for the battle with Teto, all the fights had been chaotic. Often, Jean had attacked his opponents even after the fight was over. In the second round, against Teto, Nada, and Garmund, he showcased relentless swordsmanship as if facing archenemies, despite having won the matches. He had even brandished his sword against Rinpa, who had expressed the desire to surrender. As the other legends said, if only he had tried to maintain a conversation or simply asked to be acknowledged as a successor, his brothers would have easily granted his wish. But that is not enough. So, brother, control yourself and approach the battles with more reflection. Regardless of the outcome and the process of the Great Battle Kings tournament, the brothers will undoubtedly appreciate you as before, but let's not forget that brothers are also living beings. If even a small resentment persists, it will eventually fester. Children who receive the favoritism of an absolute ruler will inevitably leave poisonous resentment among their siblings. Jean learned this truth through the relationship between Rosa and Joshua. Of course, the tribe is different from Runcandle, but after all, they are also living beings. Jean had always thought that the privileges and favoritism he received from the tribe might become a problem someday. Today, Jean would destroy any potential threats without a trace. Like the mystical technique of KO's Battle King, Baba's sword also resembled that of the god of battle. Punishment had many similarities with the sword of the reign of the King of Legends. It also showed a much stronger impulse than the first form of the true sword of the reign of the King of Legends. Despite Baba's energy surpassing his, Jean was not being pressured like he was against KO. He was wielding his sword at will. Looking back, Baba was at the center of the Battle Kings when Jean fought the initial battle through the god of battle fusion. At that time, the rest of the Battle Kings were helping Baba so she could attack properly, and KO played a crucial role in that support. The senses of the god of battle. If you hadn't learned that, if you hadn't shared the senses of the elder sister goddess of battle through fusion, you wouldn't have been able to clash swords with me in this way. Even if I received some benefits, can it compare to being born as a true legend? You're talking nonsense. Those watching the combat were left stunned, not by the conversations Jean and Baba had or by any inner thoughts revealed. The legends were amazed that Jean fought against Baba on equal footing. Baba had foreseen this situation from the moment she saw Jean in the main hall. Still, her mentality did not change regardless of the outcome. Sigmund and Light clashed fiercely. The aura and luminous energy corroded in all directions. But as time passed, their battle approached the fundamental form of a sword fight. Loud noise and explosive sound. The colossal sound of their swords clashing reverberated through the sky, almost incredibly loud, as if it could drown out any other noise. As their swords constantly clashed, there was an eerie silence, as if no sound could be heard. Both were increasingly wounded. Surprisingly, the number of wounds they had was exactly the same. When Jean struck once, Baba did too. Furthermore, the position of the wounds was perfectly symmetrical. The intense battle continued. Finally, the two distanced themselves simultaneously. Jean expanded his space by executing the erosion sword technique and the reign of the King of Legends, and Baba, she amplified her energy accordingly. Baba's power was slightly more dominant, although Jin's ultimate technique, executed by changing swords, compensated for that difference. What will you do with a sword you don't fully master, Jean Runcandle? Unlike during the time with KO, the shadow energy was clearly blocking Baba's senses successfully. It wasn't that Baba had failed to block it. It didn't matter. Before her senses completely faded, she closed her eyes first. Even in that state, she countered all of Jin's attacks just as before. If anything, she became even more formidable. To penetrate the ultimate technique like this, the ability to display superior swordsmanship even with senses shut off. For Jin, who hadn't experienced the fusion before, it was a realm of monsters he couldn't even imagine. Crack! A massive crack spread from the center of the main hall where both fought. The main hall, which had withstood so many battles without losing its robust appearance, was collapsing. Once the crack started, it absorbed the blows like a vortex, just like the relationship between Jin and the legends. At this rate, it would soon collapse. Jin decided to end the fight at that moment. It was clear that Baba was stronger than him. I will entrench myself at the moment she falls. Suddenly, if the ground they stood on disappeared, no matter how skilled Jin and Baba were, they would inevitably lose balance for a moment. I know what you're thinking. If you know, counter it accordingly. Have you already forgotten my advice? The Hall of the Gods of Battle had never collapsed in the history of the Great Tournament. Moreover, the rules of the Great Tournament included disqualification for fights outside the arena, meaning both were violating the rules. It was an exceptional case, but Vaughn did not stop the battle. In fact, the fight between the two could no longer even be considered a fight of the Great Battle Kings Tournament. It resembled more the struggle between Jin and the Tribe of Legends. If it were within Vaughn's power, she could forcibly contain the shockwaves to prevent the hall from collapsing. However, she chose to let it crumble. The main hall, known as the battlefield for the encounters of the Great Battle Kings Tournament, was situated in the center of what is now known as the Great Mitra Desert and had become a dead world after losing the war against the gods. Vaughn allowed the hall to collapse, knowing it would destroy the heart of their homeland. Boom! Crack! As the main hall split in half, all the legends tightly closed their eyes. They couldn't bear to see how the fight that had started as a small disagreement was destroying the heart of their homeland. Everyone, open your eyes and watch closely. They followed Vaughn's solemn voice. All the tribe members watched the collapse of the hall and the two fighters battling like demons amidst the debris. Just as planned, Jin had launched his attack when the hall was about to fall, stepping on the debris to shorten the distance between him and Baba. The ultimate shadow sword technique had already been released. Baba also stood firm and faced him head-on, and both suffered the same injuries again. Both had cut their left arm. Their arms mixed with the debris of the falling main hall, disappearing from sight. Then both landed simultaneously. Thanks to the force of their mutual blows, Jin and Baba inevitably ended up back-to-back. Next, as if they had made a promise, they turned and stabbed their swords. Ha! The fight was over. Jin's sword stopped short of reaching Baba's chest, and Baba's sword pierced through the shadow energy armor and Jin's chest. When Baba twisted her sword once, Jin doubled over, spitting blood. It wasn't that Jin didn't stab Baba. It was just that Baba's sword was faster. If you have something to say it now. Lightning energy. What? Explode your lightning energy. Like I did to KO. Do you think I can't? Prove it. You said you would kill me, right? Blood dripped from Baba's lips. Jin tried to lift his right arm which held the sword. His body, still pierced by the light, did not respond as he wanted, but his senses slowly returned to him. Everyone watched as Jin struggled like a wounded beast to lift his arm and stab Baba again. But if given enough time, he could gather enough strength to do so. Let me ask you one thing, Jin. Why go this far? What is the reason? The conversations they had before crossing swords, the discrimination and anxiety Jin claimed to have felt, and the reasons that led him to cross the line. None of it served as sufficient justification for the current situation, both for Baba and the legends. You can't explode it, can you? I can. I can explode it whenever I want. But first, tell me one thing. Why have you taken this so far? Bradamanti slowly rose to Baba's neck. It rose to within a hand's breadth of the neck, then fell due to fatigue, rising again, repeating the process and getting closer each time. Sister Baba, end this. Not a single member of the tribe, so angry at Jin's actions until now, screamed this way. They simply watched the two with trembling red eyes. Please, please, tell me the whole story. It's not all as you said before, is it? Isn't it? Are you going to keep talking loudly? And shouting? Squeaky. Finally, the tip of Bradamante reached Baba's neck. Although it barely grazed, the sharp blade easily penetrated Baba's neck. It only entered a little, but now, with just a little more strength from Jean, Baba would meet her death. Even so, Baba could not explode the energy of the sword that pierced Jin's chest. Jean, through her clouded and darkened pupils, she saw the blade at her neck, and then she saw Jean again. After looking like that, Baba closed her eyes. Tears mixed with blood slipped from her closed eyelids. It's okay, Brother Jean. Even I can't understand it. But if this is what my brother wants, I'll accept it. Resolution. She had a resolution before this fight. That even if it came to the end and Jean did not stop, and even if it meant he would kill her, she would never let him go. As his sister, as his dearest family. But before you stab me, know one thing. None of us, including myself, abandoned you while you went astray. Even if we got angry, spoke words full of resentment, even if we said you were no longer a brother, in the end, they were just words. It was just what we spat out in anger. Baba released the grip on her sword, lightly. Then, after opening her eyes again, she looked at Jin's wound and grasped Bradamante's sword with her right hand. If you truly hated us, you would have shattered Brother Ko's heart when you stabbed him, Brother Jean. You still have the strength to stab me, but you stopped the sword. But even if you move the sword again, I will not avoid it. If this is truly what you want, then please come back after I die. We are siblings after all. Even then, the legends watching did not shout. No one told Baba to stop or asked why Baba was dying instead of Jean. No one said they had Lingling. They were the ones who would not abandon Jean, even if he killed them all this way. Why am I doing this? You asked. Sister Baba. Sister. Hearing that common title before her own name, Baba lowered the hand holding the sword and caressed Jin's face. Bradamante fell to the ground. Yes, tell me, Brother Jean. Even if I do this, my siblings always forgive me. That's why I did it. They should hate me at least once. We should have a real fight once. Even if we hurt each other so much, I was sure that in the end we wouldn't let each other go. Jean finally confessed why he was playing the villain and collapsed into Baba's arms. And all the siblings ran towards them. Chapter 623. The final winner of the Great Battle Kings tournament was Baltarok, not Jean nor Baba. Ko couldn't participate in the remaining battles due to the injuries he sustained in the 22nd match. And Jean and Baba couldn't continue either, as they had to recover their buried arms. And Jean and the legends became uncomfortable for a while. Jean felt guilty for having pushed his brothers so aggressively for any reason, and the legends were ashamed that, regardless of the sincerity of the cause, they seemed to have let go of Jean too quickly. Although at that moment we were only speaking out of anger, in reality, everyone seemed to have considered Brother Jean less close than the other brothers. The fact that we even questioned his eligibility for succession was something that should never have happened. We should have acted more generously. If we had shown the actions that Ninth Battle King sister did at the end from the beginning, we wouldn't be so embarrassed. At that time, I was really mad to the point of insanity, but everyone easily said we should expel Brother Jean. Even if we didn't say it out loud, we couldn't resist Brother Jin's game. We're rotten to the core if any of the brothers actually tried to kill Jean. Even if Jean betrays us, we should have shown that we would never abandon our brothers. Looking back, we could have realized sooner that Brother Jean was only acting. Brother Jean injured Brother Ko by avoiding the Light Heart, and even when he attacked Fourth Battle King sister who turned around, he could have cut even deeper. I have no face to see Brother Jean. How foolish we must seem. What if Ko had prioritized Jin's honor instead of criticizing Garmond before the shocking 22nd match? What if, after the chaos of the 22nd match, Ko had screamed while grabbing Jin's head or punched him, and the rest of the brothers didn't take it too seriously, thinking, it's enough. Even after that, if everyone had acted like Baba from the beginning to the end, instead of fighting among themselves and then joining forces to defeat Jean, If they had done that, they might now seem more admirable to Jean. Such suppositions tormented the legends. They no longer cared if Jean acted well or badly. Even if they said they would kill Jean, the final decision of the entire tribe was the same as what Baba showed at the end. Unlike the countless malicious words they uttered out of spite, it was the only sincerity that didn't need verbal confirmation from others. The proposition that brothers should never be abandoned no matter how terrible the situation was always absolute and unbreakable. If the remaining members of the tribe were thousands or tens of thousands and were being ruled by another god of battle instead of Vaughn, things might have been different. At least a few might have harbored different feelings. However, the 77 members of the legends in La Ferosa were not like that. Their unity had not changed a single moment, and it was not going to change in the future. "Is your arm okay?" Ko sat next to Jean with a dull thud. He had been wandering aimlessly around Jin's room for an hour, and 5 minutes ago he had asked him the same question. Brother 5th Battle King did a good job patching it up. Jin's response was the same as 5 minutes ago. "What about 9th Battle King's sister's injuries?" "It's not comparable to what I did to you, Brother 10th Battle King. By the way, didn't you say you could walk a bit already?" "Yes. Well, I was a bit too aggressive, Brother 10th King Battle. I'm sorry." Ko was the only one who suffered an injury from which it would take more than a year to recover. Jean and Baba's arms were immediately treated with Bora's special bonding technique, so they were healed. "You didn't do anything wrong, Brother Jean. It was I who went crazy. I felt like I was losing my mind for a moment during the anticipated return of the Great Battle Kings tournament. My method was too extreme, so it should be me who apologizes." "No, Brother Jean, your method wasn't bad. Looking back, it doesn't seem like it was the best choice." "Brother Jean, what are you doing? Have you forgotten what I told you? I did it on purpose." "What?" "I needed to stimulate the brothers' competitive spirit. Seeing that Brother 8th Battle King lost to me, I think something like that was necessary sooner or later." The conversation that Jean had with Tantel after his first conflict with Ko, which led to this latest animosity. When Tantel heard Jean talk about becoming a villain and pushing his brothers, he responded thus. "I broadly understand the reason, but Brother Jean, one thing is certain. No matter how badly you behave, the outcome is fixed. Nobody really hates you no matter what happens. At least now, all 77 brothers remaining in La Ferosa are like this. Like Brother Jean. I also know that. I'm just curious how that can happen. If you're going to do it, be wicked to the end no matter how tense the atmosphere gets. Even if it's revealed they were jealous and envious of you, in reality, nobody wants to abandon you. They might treat you as if they were your archenemies, but nothing more." Tantel's words were accurate. However, the reason Jean acted so maliciously until the end was not solely due to Tantel's response. He also had the conviction that his brothers would never abandon him, and that saddened him even more. Ko placed his hand on Jin's shoulder. Seeing the large, stiff hand that was trembling slightly, Jean felt even more remorse. "That may be true, but the same goes for the other brothers. We've shown the worst instead of the best. It may sound foolish coming from me, but we can't always show our best." Jean didn't respond, and Ko readjusted his bandages to make him more comfortable. "Well, as you can see, the other brothers are quite simple. They often can't even think of simple things. So, this time everyone acted like villains. The sister goddess of battle probably guessed everything from the start, so she remained silent. Although it seemed that way, I didn't intend to shoot you, Brother Jean. I only tried to threaten you." "Well, given the situation, it's understandable." "No, even after your shadow energy exploded in my chest, I didn't carefully consider the fact that my light heart was still intact. Most of us thought you might call us out as hostages and that we had to leave like that. That's also a situation where one might easily think that way. But it also revealed that we were treating you a bit differently in the process." "I don't think so, Brother 10th Battle King. It was because I provoked the brothers. And even when I pretended to try to kill Sister Baba, the brothers were still willing to treat me like a brother. In a way, I lost." "Brother Jean." "Yes. Wait a moment. I can't stand anymore. Please let me sit down. Stop wearing that worried expression. I'll get better within a year. Anyway, we will keep losing to you in the future. That hasn't changed. Ko sat down in the chair with difficulty and let out a sigh. However, its meaning has changed a bit with this incident. How? We lose to you not because you are Brother Jean, but because you are a brother. Or you can say it's not that we've lost, but that we can't win. Brother Jean, you are not weaker than us. I'm not just talking about strength, but because among the rest of the brothers, no one can endure the hate and channel their willpower like you, Brother Jean. Is that so? Then forgive us. Forgive you. Indeed, we didn't treat you like a brother, but as Brother Jean. What are you talking about? They are in a pitiful state. Suddenly, Vaughn and Lingling entered the room. Vaughn lightly squeezed Lingling's head, who was sticking his tongue out. Ouch! That's why I hit you, Lingling. And I don't think that's what you should say. Aren't you in a position where you couldn't kill Brother Jean? Vaughn only hates me. Oh, he. Lingling tried to be mean to Vaughn, but when she gently stroked his neck, he burst out laughing. Have you come, Sister Goddess of Battle? No need to be polite, Brother 10th Battle King. Vaughn's gaze settled on Jean. It had been 15 days since the Great Battle King's tournament ended, but today was the first time Vaughn spoke directly. Outside the door, all the remaining members of the tribe were waiting with their heads bowed. This time you fought like children. I'm sorry. It felt somewhat cute to watch. In the future, there will surely be more fights, so make sure to fight like children. Even if I don't say it, you'll probably do so anyway. Vaughn handed Jean the Sigmund he had brought. Jean looked at the sword Sigmund in silence for a while. Brother Jean, whatever you did, and no matter how much the other brothers coveted it, the owner would not have changed. I know. If that meaning has become even heavier for everyone, that's enough. Jean accepted Sigmund. Vaughn added no more words to the situation. Baltarak, the final winner of the great tournament, seemed regretful not because he wanted the sword, but because he couldn't hand it over personally. Then, what do you think the brothers should do now? Upon Vaughn's words, the legends exchanged looks in silence. They weren't sure what response Vaughn expected. Naturally, all the legends' gazes turned to Jean. We should rebuild the broken main hall of the gods of battle. At Jin's response, Vaughn nodded. Brother 13th Battle King knows well. From now on, all the brothers follow Brother 13th Battle King and start rebuilding the main hall. Vaughn thought this as he watched the 77 brothers jumping into the ruins of the hall with enthusiasm. Perhaps, from the moment Jean arrived, they were already escaping the dead world. What Vaughn saw was not the vision of those trapped in the forgotten dead world, but of living beings. As she walked slowly behind the brothers, La Ferosa also became part of the group of 78 people, along with her companion, Chaos. Chapter 624, January 30th, 1803. The reconstruction of the main hall of the gods of battle had begun, and almost a year had passed. 2.5 years had also passed since Jean entered La Ferosa. The 3-year period granted by Rosa was coming to an end. Jean was slowly preparing to go outside. After the grand tournament, Jean had been training every day and rebuilding the main hall. After the grand tournament, Jean made little progress. This was because he did not feel particularly stimulated unless it was a real life-or-death fight. That's why Vaughn focused on meditation and enlightenment to help Jean grow. There were times when it took him a day or a month to solve the martial arts theme that Vaughn threw at him. Jean could not overcome all the themes. He also did not reach the level where he could proudly call himself the strongest battle king. But now, except for Vaughn and Baba, no one in the tribe believed they could defeat Jean. How does it feel to be the second strongest battle king, Brother 13th Battle King? Note: if you forgot, the 13th Battle King is Jean, said Boraz, 5th Battle King, as he sat next to Jean. Jean was sitting on the outer wall of the Hall of the Gods of Battle, watching his brothers, who were rebuilding the main hall. The second strongest Battle King? Well, I'm not there yet, Brother 5th Battle King. Haha, you still don't know your own strength, which is why you give that answer. It was true that Jean had entered the transcendent realm of the 10 stars. But as Boris said, Jean was unaware of his exact battle prowess. He only had the feeling that he had become incomparably stronger than before entering La Ferosa. Since the reconstruction of the main hall began, you only fought 3 times against Sister Ninth Battle King. And you won 1 of them. It was possible because it was a sparring. That's right. If it had been a real battle, you would have fought 3 times and died 3 times. But do you know what? Among the Battle Kings, there is no one who can win against Sister Baba even in sparring. Jean smiled shyly. So don't put on that worried face. You're leaving tomorrow. But if you make that expression, how disappointed the other brothers will feel. I'm not worried about leaving with insufficient training. On the contrary, my techniques and power have grown beyond expectations. Then, is it because the reconstruction of the main hall is not finished yet? I feel bad about leaving all the remaining work to you guys. But it's okay because Lingling is there. If Sister Baba kills Brother Jean in this encounter, the time in La Ferosa will not stop completely. Maybe it's because it was originally Brother Jin's chaos. Lingling, this child can play the same role as Brother Jean. What Vaughn said before the start of the 65th match was, of course, true. So far, the time in La Ferosa flowed only when Jean was present. And although the others didn't feel it at all, Vaughn had confirmed that the time in La Ferosa momentarily stopped every time Jean lost consciousness or was in an agonizing state. However, after Lingling's appearance, that phenomenon disappeared. Whenever the energy of Jean, which makes the time in La Ferosa flow, faded for some reason, Lingling's energy took its place. Vaughn was convinced that even if Jean left, La Ferosa would not stop. Thanks to this, Jean felt less regret for his brothers who would stay here. Ah, so that must be why. Boris cleared his throat as if he felt sorry. Brother Boris, you don't have to feel sorry. Didn't you help me as best you could? Training is not the only reason Jean came to La Ferosa. So how much more time do you need? I don't know. The reason I leave the human world is to complete things with the help of my brothers. Even if it takes time, will you definitely be able to complete it with the help of the legends? I can't guarantee that. Still not, don't know, can't guarantee it. You keep saying things that don't suit you. It's not that I gave you autonomy for that. It's no different from suspending judgment on whether it would be better to negotiate with the prophet instead of me, acting matriarch. And in my opinion, you should have resisted the prophet's temptation once in the Sword Emperor Castle War. The completion of the space-time device and securing a way to purify the chaos. The prophet already said she can do everything I want to do now. But the reason I'm giving you a chance is because Siren believes in you, and because you impressed me a little. After arriving in La Ferosa, Jean achieved more than expected. However, regarding the space-time device and the purification of the chaos, he did not obtain results that could be said to be certain. Regarding the space-time device, Dr. Quall and my companions must have been analyzing it continuously, so it wouldn't lack results at all. Jean will have to go out to check it tomorrow, but he dismissed that his companions have analyzed the space-time machine perfectly. Valeria's record magic was added instead of Zippel's technology, but even the arrogant Quall admitted that it was impossible to complete the space-time device in 3 years. The means of purifying the chaos had already been created through Boris. The chaos purifier was created by improving the chaos extraction aid that Boris used to extract Lingling from Jean. However, the reason Boris acted apologetically was due to the limitations of that device. I'm worried that your enemies out there might have something better than what I've made, Brother Jean. The Prophet and Zippel are truly ruthless and won't hesitate to use any means. Their devices might be superior to yours right now. However, they won't be able to provide fundamental healing like your purifier, Brother Boris. The Prophet will amplify and control the chaos to use it as a means of strengthening, and Zippel will conduct research to suspend the demonization of chaos. First of all, Kinslow had been using chaos for a long time. Jean expected the dynamics of each force dealing with chaos to be like this. And what Jean wanted was fundamental purification. He wanted a way to completely undo the invasion, not just use that disgusting power in any way. Boris created a device that perfectly aligned with his wishes. However, the healing period through the purifier was too long, and there was the issue that the blood of the god of battle was used as a purification medium. Perhaps it was also completely ineffective against the first chaos that could be presumed to be handled by the prophet. I am proud and grateful for the purifier you made, Brother Boris. Figure out how to improve it and mass-produce it by combining it with external technology. I will continue researching, but something that can replace the blood of the elder sister goddess of battle is very far off for now. Or, if we can complete the space-time device and bring everyone out, it would be perfect. The elder sister goddess of battle has the ability to extract chaos without a purifier. In Jin's case, as he was the first chaos, he needed the help of a chaos extractor, and even she wasn't sure about the side effects after that. It was another story when it came to a normal chaos and not so enormous. If there was an extraction aid, Vaughn could extract the chaos only with her own ability without major side effects. Boris patted Jean on the shoulder. Anyway, if your family dares to evaluate your growth as insufficient, then counterattack and win. Now you have the power to do so, Brother Jean. It's not just a story about battle prowess. Jean smiled and nodded. Upon returning to his clan, it was inevitable to start a war with Rosa if she considered Jin's achievements insufficient. After going outside, the possibility of creating achievements that can completely convince my mother in the remaining 6 months is not great. My mother will end up joining the prophet. Rosa Runcandle. The nemesis of his life awaited Jean outside. Not only her, but also Zippel, Kinslow, and the imperial family, who were accumulating power. But despite the concerns, Jean wasn't afraid because he had his brothers and companions. As the enemies grew stronger, so did Jean and his allies. By the way, I wonder how your companion, Qual, will react when we get out. He will surely have the honor of building the greatest flying fleet in history. Flying fleet. As seen from the floating of the main hall in the Great Tournament, the legends already possessed flight technology 5,000 years ago. The Light Heart, the heart of the tribe, became a powerful power source after death and couldn't be compared to anything in the world. The tribe made floating objects like the main hall with the hearts of their dead brothers and also developed flying warships. The flying warships were revealed to the world for the first time during the final war against the gods, and were destroyed after their defeat. With countless light hearts, the name of the fleet was Gold. The bundle of papers that Jean had just taken out of his bag was the blueprint of the Golden Fleet that Vaughn had handed him. The blueprint still bore the traces of the fierce war waged against the gods. Some parts may be missing, but it seems your companion named Qual can somehow complete it. I will definitely show it to my brothers. It was a symbol of destruction and defeat for us, but if it becomes a symbol of victory and glory again through Brother Jean, it could be a small comfort to the dead brothers. We can't forget them either. Boris gets up from his seat. Okay, let's stop chatting. Let's help the brothers with their work. We have to quickly finish today's quota to celebrate the farewell party. Even on the eve of Jin's departure, the reconstruction of the main hall continued until midnight, as always. Normally, the legends would have stopped rebuilding for a day or so to have a bit more fun with Jin's departure. However, this farewell was different from the usual. Although Jean was leaving, time wouldn't stop, and the brothers had to prepare for tomorrow. For Jean and for themselves. The drinking party continued all night, seeing the brothers open their mouths in all directions, saying they would eat their achievements and linglings. Jean left La Ferosa. See you outside, brother. Humph. Get out quickly. Lingling stuck her tongue out at Jean until the end, but when he hugged Shuri, she burst into tears. It's not even the last time, so why are you crying so sadly, Lingling? See you outside. I hope you speak a bit better by then. Again, don't let yourself get beaten like an idiot. You ugh. At that, Vaughn grabbed Lingling's head again, and Jean smiled and exchanged glances with his brothers. See you outside, brothers. Even if it's not the last time, I want to say this before I leave. La Ferosa is also my hometown. I will return. Chapter 625. Last day of January, 1803. When Jean left La Ferosa, he expected the endless expanse of the reddish desert to welcome him, as always. After completing his first trip to La Ferosa, Jean accidentally encountered Darkflame and remembered the Felinoids he met upon entering this time. What is this? However, as soon as he opened the door with the Shadow Blade and entered the human world, the landscape that greeted Jean was not the familiar great desert of Mitra. A sticky wind, like rotten oil, blew relentlessly. The wind carried an acrid toxicity, and the land and sky beyond were shrouded in an ominous darkness. Moreover, unsettling and deep roars could be heard from various directions. Is this the great desert of Mitra? Jean thought it was the Black Sea. Jean looked at the ground and realized that the desolate landscape of the great desert of Mitra was contaminated by chaos. There were only a few scattered pieces of sand here and there. Even the last vestiges of nature's vitality had been forcibly embraced by this now murky and contaminated sand. Sigh! The great desert of Mitra was originally the land of the tribe of legends. The great desert of Mitra, which thwarted numerous adventurers seeking myths and legends, was the land that once housed the Golden City, La Ferosa, until the tribe faced its destruction. Therefore, Jean dreamed of the day when the city of his brothers would shine again in this desert. Just before stepping out through the door, Jean tightened the knot of the enormous backpack he was carrying even more. The bag contained the light heart of the dead legends from the past, a chaos purifier, Vaughn's blood, and the blueprint of the Golden Army. Even in death, you stir up trouble to the end. Gleek. Jean ground his teeth at the thought of the terrible king of the Black Sea. It was also worrying. If the great desert of Mitra is in these conditions, what about other places? Contaminated areas. 2.5 years ago, there were about 50 known contaminated areas in the world. As the days passed, new contaminated areas were discovered, but the great desert of Mitra was not contaminated until Jean went to La Ferosa. Just as the contagious chaos was unleashed after Gleek's disappearance, the contamination on the ground was also spreading. At first glance, the contamination of the great desert was at a severe level. Not only was it contaminated by chaos, but it was considered as if Gleek's fragments had fallen directly on the land. It was not an entirely unexpected problem. There was no law saying that the contagion of chaos had to be limited to living beings. However, the fact that weak forces like Runcandle and Zippel could not prevent it was another story. Or maybe the great desert of Mitra has been excluded from the purification areas. If a great amount of manpower is still being dedicated to cleaning the contaminated areas around the world, this could well be the case. It was just a matter of leaving the desert and investigating other areas. Anyway, Jin's first impression of the human world after 3 years was very unpleasant. Keek! Suddenly, something viciously attacked Jean with a threatening sound. Jean, without even looking at it, raised his lightning energy and killed it. There was no need to observe because the monsters were swarming from all sides, led by him. 100, 200, 300, 400, more than 1,000. Jean quickly estimated the approximate number of monsters surrounding him, but soon gave up. Counting more than 1,000 was not important at this moment. It was just a matter of killing them all. Jean drew Sigmund from its sheath. Battle God's techniques. Ninth sword movement annihilation in an instant. The dark sky turned blue. A lightning energy in the shape of a wing formed behind Jean, scattered a dazzling glow. The lightning energy seemed to tear the black sky at any moment. And as soon as the lightning energy was unleashed, a group of monsters running from the front died. They disappeared like dust consumed by fire. Instead of screams, the bones and flesh of the monsters turned to ash and dispersed. The nearby monsters, who reflexively saw the ashes disperse, met their death without more. The pale blade sprayed sword energy in all directions, like the light reflected from a sharp blade. It seemed that Jean was shooting randomly, but the countless blades massacred the chaos remnants without making a single mistake. The monsters seemed to lack emotion. Even when Jean lightly swung the sword, causing dozens of them to die at once, they kept charging without showing any sign of fear. Jean did not want them to flee in panic. If time and circumstances allowed, Jean wanted to eliminate all the monsters that profaned his brother's land. Every second, dozens or even hundreds of monsters exploded or were split in half. The ordinary chaos-infected retained some semblance of their previous appearance as humans. However, the monsters Jean was massacring were all pure remnants of chaos. There are quite a few. If it had been Jean before becoming the Battle King, he would not have decided to eliminate all the monsters in the desert. His original approach was to break through, escape, accurately assess the scale, and then seek more efficient methods. This was to avoid the possibility of exhaustion and becoming vulnerable when facing the endless avalanche of monsters. That was no longer necessary. Even as he poured out lightning energy and aura like a madman, his body felt as comfortable as when he sat quietly meditating. Monsters of this level could no longer threaten Jean, even if 1,000,000 of them besieged him, just as ants could do nothing against a dragon. At this point, it seems the entire world is using the Great Mitra Desert as a dump. Or has Kinzalo fallen? But that's highly unlikely. The Great Mitra Desert belongs to the land of the Beastmen, and the land of the Beastmen was currently Kinzalo's territory. Even if the desert was considered worthless land, there was no reason to let it go to waste like this. If Kinzalo hasn't really fallen, someone will come soon anyway. Arriving at this conclusion, Jean momentarily halted his sword. It was because among the monsters, a human figure could be seen. They weren't minions of any faction Jean would have expected to come after sensing his battle in the desert. Living golems? Or demon men? They were distorted like the rescued victims during the subjugation of the Dark Magic Society. Or they had neither faces nor hair like the demon men of the imperial family he faced in the Wantaramo forest. Intuitively, Jean could sense they were discarded experiment subjects. Furthermore, unlike the previous living golems and demon men, their bodies were fully contaminated by chaos. Chaos Purifier could only be effective on infected individuals before full invasion and bodily transformation. Moreover, these beings had already been subjected to experiments before being contaminated by chaos, so they were beyond the reach of purification even with Boris's purifying device. Like other monsters, they lunged at Jean. Jean, watching them closely as he dodged their attacks, soon realized a shocking fact. There seems to be a certain pattern in chaos. Like a magic circle or alchemical symbols, the chaos clinging to the bodies of these infected beings displayed a complex yet discernible pattern. The traces seemed to be part of an experiment. The major factions were not only cleaning up infected and contaminated areas but also using them. Broadly speaking, experimental subjects could be classified into two types. The incomplete legend type created by Kinzalo and the incomplete demon men, which seemed to be created by collaboration between Zippel and the imperial family. The former used lightning energy, while the latter employed aura and mana. It was no longer surprising that these experiments pursued the ideals of the tribe of legends and the magical swordsman. All Jean could do for them was grant them a quick end. Some of them might have been forcibly captured, or they might have been betrayed after swearing allegiance to a faction and turned into test subjects. In any case, Jean wielded his sword to ensure they felt the least possible suffering, even though the basic sense of such feelings seemed absent in them. Time passed, and the monsters Jean had massacred exceeded tens of thousands. The discarded golems and demon men were no longer in sight. Although the density of monsters charging at him remained the same, Jean showed no signs of fatigue. The more he wielded his sword, the more his anger grew. Jean hoped that soon, someone would appear whom he could ask and discuss this dire situation with. And soon, Jean felt a new energy, not chaos, beyond the dark landscape of the contaminated desert. They've finally arrived. It was still quite far away, perhaps more than 1,000 steps. However, the figure emitting the new energy seemed to sway the unstable chaos winds. A demon and a strong one. Zephyrin or Bianca. Which could it be? The energy pushing chaos carried a dark energy exclusive to demons. It resembled the demonic energy Jean had sensed in powerful figures from the demon world, such as Zephyrin and Bianca Caligo. Jean unleashed a burst of lightning energy and calmly awaited the newcomer. The lightning energy that erupted converged back into Jin's light heart, but the nearby monsters couldn't even bear it and rusted away into ashes. Oh! Finally, the demon appeared before Jean. It was neither Zephyrin nor Bianca. It was a male demon Jean had never seen before, and as soon as he saw Jean, he exclaimed admiringly as if he had seen something interesting. I wondered what kind of madman would be playing in my yard without any fear. Are you Jean Runcandle? Clad in an extravagant coat adorned with elaborate gold embroideries, gemstones, and embellishments all over, he seemed to carry himself with what he believed was graceful elegance. In other words, he was revealing himself to be an aristocrat of the demon world with his entire body. However, despite the excessive display of vanity and extravagance, his mere presence made the monsters in the area falter. When the monsters resumed their charge, a single gesture from him turned them into a bloody hailstorm. It was clear he was strong, surpassing the standards of strength Jean had encountered so far. Black hair, handsome face, insolent gaze. That's right, Jean Runcandle. I never thought I would find you here. Allow me to introduce myself formally. I am Ranka Halovice, the first prince of the Halovice family, the fourth Grand Duke of the demon world, the ruler and protector of the northern regions of the demon world and its inhabitants, the owner of Mount TNA and Mount Carrion. Bastard! Are you a member of Kinslow? It's clever of you to introduce yourself first. Jean cut off his words and met Ranka's eyes. As I've heard, you lack manners. Ha! Bang! Jean punched Ranka in the jaw before he could finish the sentence. Ugh! If not, you would have introduced yourself with a broken jaw. Chapter 626. The first emotion that came to Ranka Halovice's mind was confusion. My jaw, broken? And with a single punch. Ranka was proud of having the best physique among the four great dukes of the demon world. It was the first time a bone had been broken with a single blow in his reign as a powerful demon. The next emotion that flooded Ranka was anger. How dare someone interrupt him and even punch him without hesitation? However, it wasn't the time to lose composure yet. Just because the opponent was rude didn't mean a noble like him should stoop to the same level. Crunch! Ranka, who had distanced himself, forcibly aligned his misaligned jaw. The displaced bone quickly healed as it returned to its original position. Attacking an unprepared opponent has always been the prerogative of the humble. Humph! I greeted you first with a welcoming heart, and you respond with such discourtesy. Keck! Bang! The jaw Ranka had just realigned broke again as Jean struck with his elbow. Ranka once again increased the distance and felt tears welling up. Oh, come on! Ranka fixed his jaw as he retreated. Did you let your guard down again? No. I was just trying to maintain my dignity. Then you've died twice at my hands for trying to maintain your dignity. If I had struck you properly, your head would have disappeared. Then, I have no reason to respect you anymore. Ranka's eyes turned blood red. A spiked whip materialized in his hand before anyone could notice. A spiked whip? What an elegant weapon you use. Shock! The whip flew with a roar. Ranka turned dozens of chaos remnants into ashes with just a slight hand movement and the release of demonic energy. Of course, the power of the whip, properly imbued with energy, would be beyond comparison. Now that I think about it, this is the first time I'm facing someone since the last sparring with Elder Sister Baba. Was that why? To Jean, Ranka's whip seemed harmless. It was like watching the clumsy swordsmanship of a novice knight. Jean didn't have the impression that Ranka was strong. You don't have any plans to avoid it? Thud. Quack. When Jean grabbed the spiked whip with his own hands, Ranka's eyes widened as if they were about to pop out. The sturdy thorns of the spiked wood from the demon world broke lifelessly in Jeremiah's grip. I've heard that he was far below Bianca until 2.5 years ago. Did everyone lie to me? He grabbed it with his bare hands. All the information Ranka had about Jean came from the stories of the members of Kinslow. Therefore, he knew that Jin's combat prowess was already around the 10-star level even 2 years and 6 months ago, and he also took into account that Jean would have achieved considerable growth after entering closed-door training. But the human now wielding the whip was different from what the members of Kinslow had described. The only reason I haven't killed you directly is for one thing, demon. Ranka. Ranka Halovice. Because I have some questions. Why did the great desert of Mitra end up in this state, and why did you call this place a playground? Explain in detail, and I might show some mercy. Show mercy? Ha! I'm speechless. I mean, I'll kill you in a way that isn't too painful. It seems you've grown a bit more than I've heard. But don't get ahead of yourself. This Lord Ranka is really strong. Oh, really? Compared to Bianca Caligo, you seem very ridiculous to me. I am superior to that lowly Caligo. Don't compare me to that lowly wench. Swoosh. Ranka pulled the whip with all his might. However, Jean was immovable like a giant stone, and Ranka's posture only became more ridiculous. Additionally, Jean seemed calm, using just one hand. Ha ha ha. Alright, I admit it. Your strength surpasses mine. Ranka drew a new spiked whip and resumed his attack on Jeremiah. Only then did Jean effortlessly dodge the whip with Sigmund. Do you really not understand the situation? Or do you have something to believe in? Are you expecting your friends to come rescue you? This Lord Ranka doesn't need such things. As he said that, Ranka suddenly felt a chill on his neck. It was because Jean, who was supposed to be beyond the rain of whips, had disappeared. It seems you're not used to fighting opponents stronger than you. In such situations, it's not about forcing courage by pushing away fear. Jin's voice came from the side, 10 steps away. It was such a distance that it wouldn't be strange for Ranka to be decapitated in the blink of an eye. The best thing is to quickly admit defeat and plan survival. For that, you have to prove your worth to the opponent. Present immediate reasons and evidence why they shouldn't kill you right away, so you can have a chance in the future. Besides, didn't I personally tell you what I want from you? A dash. The demonic energy shot by Ranka attacked Jean like a dragon's breath. Of course, Jean easily dodged the demonic energy and resumed his position. The demonic energy, which spread through the air, reached far, sweeping away everything in its path. Thump, thump, thump. Ranka's heart pounded in his chest like the beat of a war drum. Fear, an emotion he hadn't felt in a long time, now overwhelmed him. Tell me why the great desert has become like this. There was no killing intent in Jin's voice. It was a calm tone, but Ranka could feel cold sweat oozing from every pore. Ranka's breathing became labored. He was thinking about his father. Is this green horn really up to my father's strength? It seemed as if his father was standing right in front of him. A terrible feeling, as if an enormous, unbreakable wall was closing in from all sides, throwing Ranka into a swamp of panic. The great desert. Well, it seems you've finally decided to be a bit smarter. The desert? The desert. You'll see. Jean waited for a while, but Ranka trembled and couldn't say anything. This guy is in a strange state. Just as Jean was about to approach to threaten him, Ranka's whip passed right in front of Jin's eyes. Although he reacted promptly, it was a clearly sharper attack than a moment ago. It was an attack Ranka launched unconsciously. Now Jin's eyes were full of bloodlust. I don't know if you're scared or if unpleasant memories have surfaced in your mind, but you'll come to your senses if I give you a beating. At the same time, the former headquarters of Kinsalo, land of the Beastmen. What? Ranka suddenly left, saying something happened in the desert. Huh? Is there a problem with that? Anas Caligo and Bouvard Gaston. As usual, the two shared sweet potato croquettes and received reports from the Beastmen. Among those who remained at the former headquarters, Ranka was the only one notable enough to sense the battle in the Great Desert. If it's Ranka's summoning technique experiment, it's possible. Oh, that strange experiment where he wanted to summon the souls of the former Grand Dukes. What do you think, Bouvard? Should I tell the Grand Duchess or my sister? Wouldn't Lord Ranka be upset if it were just an experimental accident like last time? Lord Ranka is the type who can't stand accepting help from others. What if it wasn't Ranka's experiment, but an intruder or something? The Great Desert is also the area where Jean Runcandle was last believed to have moved. Ah, It's been over a year since the Great Desert was contaminated. Since then, everyone has been using it as a dumping ground for experiments. Do you think that bastard stayed there because he wanted to train? We also conducted a search. Indeed, that makes sense, right? Bouvard is undeniably smart. But well, even if it's an intruder, it's probably just people from Tychon coming to retrieve waste. Although Lord Ranka is a bit foolish, he's not someone who can be defeated by people from Tychon. Well, it wouldn't even be a problem for my elder sister. But Ranka is also strong. He's really strong, especially when he loses control. Even before the fall of the demon world, we were well aware of Ranka's fury. Anyway, when Ranka comes, let's ask him to prepare some food. Something delicious. Let's try new cookies that break Latree's snack shop. Cook. Kek. While Anas and Bouvard chatted, Ranka suffered a devastating defeat against Jean. Whenever trauma related to his father was triggered, Ranka would usually enter a rage, becoming stronger. In that state, he was invincible against anyone. However, as of today, the unbeaten streak of rampaging Ranka has been broken. When he won, he wouldn't remember the process, but not this time. Although it was a fierce battle, from the moment he started being seriously pushed back, the rampage stopped, and his consciousness returned. Wow! Jean wiped his forehead and caught his breath. He was also bleeding from cuts and bruises all over his body. He wasn't mortally wounded, but there were several injuries that could be considered serious. However, if he hadn't fought while protecting the backpack containing the items from La Ferosa, he would have ended up with only minor wounds. So, demon, you mean? Stop calling me demon. My name is Ranka, Halo Vice. Since I heard your request, you should also show some respect. Ranka spat blood. He was barely breathing, with all his limbs broken. Yes, Ranka Halo Vice. I acknowledge your tenacity. Anyway, according to your explanation, the reason the desert ended up like this is that all factions used it as an experimental dumping ground after the contamination. You used it as a playground because you liked being here? Is that what you're saying? Yes. The first reason is acceptable, but the second is not enough. You were trying to do something here. I just like being here, that's all. Jean thought for a moment about what Ranka was trying to do here, and Ranka became aware of the backpack Jean had been trying to protect. Finally, it seemed the only way to survive was to create an opening by aiming at it. And Jean decided that whatever Ranka was trying to do here, it was a matter to find out later. Well, that's enough. I'll handle the rest. And I'll tell you in advance. If you're thinking of doing something to my backpack to get out of this crisis, forget it. Ranka lowered his head. He had tried even before things got so rough, but he couldn't leave even a small scratch on the backpack. Now it would be even harder, and as long as Jean was aware of it, it was absolutely impossible. I've lost. Kill me. I will. Is there anything you want to say? In this place, erect a monument commemorating my glory and nobility. While listening to Ranka's last words, suddenly, Jean struck down the fallen Ranka with his sword. Whenever an important figure from Kinselo was in danger, he would appear without fail and unexpectedly. It was because Orgel, the demon beast king's steel door, formed over Ranka. Ha! It's been a while since I saw that damned steel door. Ching dash! The speed at which the steel door sucked in Ranka was a bit faster. Jean squinted his eyes, annoyed, and glared at the steel door. Even after saving Ranka, the steel door did not disappear immediately, and Jean heard his voice. You have returned, Jean Runcandle. It was the voice of Orgel, the leader of Kinselo. Chapter 627. Demon Beast King Orgel. Jean gazed at the blurry landscape beyond the steel door. Instead of Orgel's figure, a distorted and blurry form of space appeared. You disappeared 2 years and 6 months ago and suddenly reappeared in the Great Desert. It seems your god has hidden the remaining legends somewhere here. As soon as you returned, you pushed my loyal subordinate to the brink of death. If you don't like it, leave through the door immediately. Thanks to him, my body has warmed up a bit. You've become too strong to kill now. There's no reason for it either. Of course, Kinslow had no reason to kill Jean. There was no better hand than Jean to keep Runcandle and Zipple in check. From Orgel's response, Jean could infer that the balance and tension between the major factions were still being maintained. Surely, the day will come when you all will be annihilated while trying to keep the other factions in check through me. Considering the actions you've shown so far, it's a possibility. But don't worry, we'll prepare on our end as well. Doesn't that sound more like a warning than a concern? If that's how you want to interpret it, it must be quite a threat. I don't know if it's out of confidence or because you had no choice but to save that demon. But this time you've made another mistake. You've revealed that you haven't fully recovered your strength yet. Let's hope Ranka's life was worth enough to pay for it. There was a moment of silence. Soon, as if it didn't make sense to keep talking, Jean turned around first. Orgel watched Jin's back and added these words. You'll have to climb many mountains before you meet me. I also hope you don't die during the journey. When Jean disappeared beyond the winds of chaos, the leader immediately opened a new steel door to Kinslow's former headquarters, the same place where Anas and Bouvard were chatting while attacking Ranka. It's the leader. Oh, leader? Why are you here suddenly? Ranka was struck by Jean. What? Ranka? Jean Runcandle was there. Lord Ranka was injured? By him? Ranka isn't dead, right? Fortunately, he survived. Quickly gather the rest of the important documents from the headquarters. And how many of those Legends-type golems are there? 5. No, was it 4? Whatever it is, only you. And they pass through the steel door. Issue evacuation orders to the rest of the members to their designated branches. From now on, the entire former headquarters is closed. I don't know how he defeated Ranka. He'd be exhausted if he fought against Ranka, so I'd rather deal with him now. Jean wasn't even tired, and that's too heavy a blow. Prepare quickly. Anas and Bouvard hurried to gather the documents. 4 Legends-type golems also crossed the steel door. And as they left, Jean exited the Great Desert of Mitra and began to destroy all the contaminated areas in the Beastman's Land randomly for 12 hours. In the process, all the contaminated areas outside the Great Desert of Mitra were reduced to ashes, and Kinslow's former headquarters, hidden underground, was completely pulverized. Vamal Alliance, Tychon Free City. Kashmir and Jin's allies were receiving reports from the 7-colored peacock. The reports about the massive destruction that had taken place in the contaminated area in the Beastman's Land and Kinslow's former headquarters. In the Beastman's Land, where Kinslow's former headquarters was located, there had frequently been large and small battles between each of the factions. Until about a year ago, all the factions agreed to use it as a waste dump. However, those who knew the details of those battles actually evaluated Kinslow as the final winner of the struggle. The Great Desert was used as a common waste dump, but it was managed solely by Kinslow's demon, Ranka. Zipple and Runcandle failed to place personnel in the Great Desert. Therefore, since the Great Desert was put under Ranka's management, Tychon had made constant efforts to determine what Kinslow was doing there. Of course, it was for Jean. They judged that there could be a major problem when Jean returned and faced Ranka or some other strong person from Kinslow right after leaving La Ferosa. Moreover, the reason why each force had so many unofficial battles in the Great Desert, even violating the ceasefire agreement, was also a problem. If the main faction somehow discovered that Jean was in La Ferosa, they would plan to wait for his return and eliminate him. Tychon also had to be determined and prepared. Of course, the reason why Runcandle was obsessed with the Great Desert might be different from that of Zipple and Kinslow. First of all, as soon as Jean went into closed-door training, the Runcandle side spread the relevant articles first. The next patriarch of Runcandle has gone into closed-door training. Therefore, unlike the other two forces, Runcandle's reason for securing the Great Desert must be the safety of Jean. Recently, the atmosphere in Runcandle, according to Tychon's perception, had been unsettling, to the point that Tychon judged that even Runcandle might be trying to secure the Great Desert to eliminate Jean. The informants of the 7-colored peacocks only found out that there was a problem in the land of the Beastmen, but they didn't know exactly what kind of struggle was taking place. Since a large amount of lightning bolt energy was observed, maybe it's Jean Nim? Kashmir Nim, said Valkaz. If that is the case, even better. The attacks were strong enough to devastate the entire land of the Beastmen. It's more likely a battle between groups than between individuals, Kashmir responded, sounding frustrated, which made Valkaz and Gilly sigh. Even if Jean reached the 10-star level within 3 years, it was hard to imagine he could destroy the entire Beastmen area by himself. Moreover, Ranka was there, the demon who fought numerous battles against Runcandle and Zippel in the Great Desert and always showed overwhelming strength. Tychon had confirmed that Ranka also won against the Black Knights and the Spectre Corps. Furthermore, the land of the Beastmen and Kinzelo's old headquarters were destroyed. This battle will be Kinzelo's defeat. Authority over the Great Desert will pass to the victor. Runcandle, Zippel. No matter which of the two had the Great Desert, it was a bigger problem than Kinzelo. Unlike Kinzelo, there would be no room for negotiation with other factions. Wow, if they confirmed the existence of La Ferosa, we need to find out what they are doing. The worst of all, if Jean Nim is attacked as soon as La Ferosa exists. Since we can't be sure just by discussing it here, we have no choice but to go check it ourselves. A heavy silence descended over the meeting room. Currently, Tychon was suffering from a severe manpower shortage. Thanks to Qual's skill, they had built a perfect fortification, but Murakin was still acting as Soderet's proxy, and Misha was also sealing Elona. Above all, the Phantom Fortress had a problem. Currently, all of Tychon's strongest members, except Valkaz, were waiting near the Phantom Fortress, the base of the Phantom Mercenaries. They couldn't even ask for help from the Hidden Palace and Nameless. The internal injuries of Talaris, which she suffered during the Sword Emperor Castle War, had not healed at all, similar to Ronstadt, and even Yona, who often visited Tychon after Jin's departure, had suddenly stopped contacting them. And Tychon could not rule out the possibility that Yona succumbed to the chaos. Valkaz Nim, it's too dangerous for you alone. I will go to my clan and to Hyran to ask for help. No, Gilly. Runcandle is too dangerous. It would be better to go to Hyran. Your Majesty! Someone shouted urgently and entered the meeting room. It was Jet. And everyone's hearts leapt when they saw Jet's excited expression and Jean standing behind him. Jean Nim. My lord! Young master! Ha ha! Our lord has finally returned. Gilly was the first to run and hug Jean. Jean comforted her for a while and smiled. I'm back, Gilly. Young master. I'm relieved to see you back safe. But these wounds. The traces of battle were evident all over Jin's body. As soon as I left La Ferosa, a guy named Ranka attacked me. I couldn't kill him because Orgel saved him. At that moment, everyone present in the room couldn't help but be astonished to the point where their concerns from moments ago seemed trivial. Are Ranka Halovice? Then the Beastmen area. Did you really destroy it alone, young master? While Gilly was examining Jin's body, she realized that all the black marks of chaos had disappeared. Moreover, he had become noticeably stronger than before. I guess we worried for nothing, Kashmir. I guess so. What kind of training did you undergo for 3 years, Jean Nim? Anyway, I'm glad you're back safe. There's much to discuss and much to hear. But first, it seems I must go to the Phantom Fortress. On the way to the meeting room, Jean heard about the Phantom Fortress from Jet. Smarian Proc, the father of Lada and Faye, and the former leader of the Phantom Mercenaries, considered the strongest in the history of the Phantom Mercenary Corps. The reason why Tychon's strongest members were currently waiting near the Phantom Fortress was because his seal was about to break. Let's discuss on the way. Kashmir can't leave his post, so for now, only Gilly, Valkaz Nim, and I will go. What is this, Jean Runcandle? Did you just return? Qual also entered the meeting room. He came to report to Kashmir about the investigation situation without knowing that Jean had returned. He looked even more disheveled than before, as if his previous investigation had been especially exhausting. I think you haven't been smoking 5 cigarettes at once, even in the presence of children, Dr. Qual. Humph, no matter how hard it is, I don't do things like that. It looks like you have things from the tribe of legends. Please analyze them while I go to the Phantom Fortress. Dr. Qual, I also brought some plans that would drive you crazy. I'll listen to the details of your investigation when I return. Oh, I see. That's great. There's a dirigible I finished a month ago, so go ride it. The performance is quite amazing. It will serve as an answer to your research questions. Chapter 628. The fact that you've already built the aircraft surpasses my expectations. You'll take the first flight except for the few test flights I did with Valeria. Feel proud. I've created something no one else can even imagine. I'll come after inspecting the aircraft, so please wait while we talk about past stories. All right. Originally, the fastest way to get to the Phantom Fortress was to use the transfer portal. The Phantom Fortress was located in the Vermont Empire, and the Vermont Empire had the most transfer gates in the world. Moreover, since the current ruler of Vermont was Regent Dante, there were no procedural problems. However, in the 3 years since Jean left, many things had changed in the world. By the way, wouldn't it be faster to use the transfer gate? At Jin's words, Valkaz shook his head. Firstly, all the transfer portals in the world had been deactivated. It's due to the chaos that has spread worldwide, Jin. Originally, the transfer gates became extremely dangerous only during heavy snowfalls and rains, but now the omnipresent chaos particles play that role. Moreover, all factions entered a Cold War called a ceasefire and closed all connection points. Anyway, they can't use them because of the chaos particles. Additionally, battleships, which were considered exclusive to Zippel until Granil appeared, are now quite common. Not to mention Zippel and Kinslow, even the Imperial family, which joined Zippel along with the eastern part of the Empire, as Jean predicted, received their blueprints and operated several battleships. If Dr. Quall hadn't completed the flying ship, we would have had to use land and sea routes to get to the Phantom Fortress. He has completed more than 10 flying ships so far, my lord. He just smashed them all, saying these kinds of things are trash. If it weren't for the merchant of the Golden Snow tribe, Tychon would have already gone bankrupt. Anyway, geniuses are known for being eccentric, aren't they? Additionally, there has been rapid development of Zippel's living golem, the Imperial family's demon men, and Kinslow's legend-type golems. The subjects Jean saw in the Great Desert were in chaos, and there were certain codes. At that time, as Jean predicted, each force was strengthening the test subjects through their own chaos control. Kinslow had the highest chaos control, followed by Zippel and the Imperial family. However, each faction did not know exactly the technological prowess of the other. Valkaz and Gilly took turns explaining these things. By the way, the things that worried me when I saw the Zippel fleet in the Soda Desert happened exactly as I thought. I think it's fortunate that the enemies haven't added a few Kozek or Granil-class battleships yet. Unlike other factions, Runcandle only captured a few battleships. Although the Seven-Colored Peacock confirmed that Runcandle had kidnapped the shipbuilders, they could not secure the key personnel. Even if they secured the key personnel and all the blueprints, finding an engineer to produce them would be another matter. Runcandle also made no progress in chaos control. Of course, it was commendable to train only pure knights amidst horrible living golems and modified humans, but it was undeniable that Runcandle was falling behind. But there must be some things the Prophet has arranged. If my family is already under the Prophet's control, they must be hiding it. The blueprints and parts of the spacetime device obtained in the Soda Desert were still in Tychon's possession, as 3 years ago. And while Jean was away, Runcandle never targeted Tychon. If the technological gap was really severe, Mother would have interrogated my companions even if she had to break her promise to me. Jean said he would complete both the blueprints and the machine through the Brothers of the Tribe, but it was not difficult for Rosa to realize while Quall's research materials were continuously supplied to Tychon. But the reason my mother never pressured Tychon is because she judged it's fine. Or, it's the Prophet, not my mother. After the rapid development of each faction's technology, Runcandle's external status had fallen to 3rd place after Zippel and Kinslow. People's perception was definitely like that. Some even commented that Runcandle was a clan with only a limited time left until it perished. If that assessment is true, it seems Zippel would have pressured Runcandle more regardless of a ceasefire. Yes, young master, the main factions still avoid serious conflicts with our clan, because they are aware of my father's and the Prophet's existence. There was still no news from Siren's expedition. At least that Tychon knew. Didn't you say it was half a year ago when the Garden of Swords started controlling news about me? Yes, young master. Until then, articles about your achievements and progress in closed-door training were periodically published. It was like printing your status as the next patriarch to both the family members and the public. Now, even the non-family bulletins do not publish an article about you, young master. It was the reason why Jin's companions were worried about the possibility of Runkandle threatening Jin just before he arrived at Taiken. It wasn't just media control. For the past 6 months, Runkandle had completely hidden all activities of the clan's top brass, sealing off the entire city of Kalen, where the Garden of Swords was located. At that time, rumors were circulating that the fallen Joshua Runkandle had been reinstated, or that Rosa had usurped the throne while Siren was absent. As far as we know, sir, there have been a total of 7 explosions and earthquakes detected near Kalen since you left. We couldn't confirm if it was a civil war or caused by something else. There's a high possibility it was caused by Mother's rampage. If Taiken detected 7, there must have been many more. It was difficult to guess the current state of the Garden of Swords just by hearing the story. If Rosa went berserk and the family's command was in danger, or if a civil war broke out, other factions wouldn't have remained idle. If the technological gap were severe, they would have attacked Taiken, and if Joshua had been reinstated, he should have already revealed himself at the forefront. None of those scenarios were happening. This worried Jin even more. The worst possible scenario is this: the Prophet has already taken control of the family, and their power is enough to make other factions fear them. Runkandle has protected and left Taiken alone, so far only to confirm and incorporate the new information that Jin would bring. I'm sorry. We should have gathered more information before you came, sir. The world has changed much faster than I thought. I am more than grateful that all of you endured without deaths or serious injuries. Don't speak like that, Sir Valkaz. You all did better than expected. Indeed, Jin felt it was a miracle that all his companions remained unscathed amid the world's upheavals. Anyway, it's better to reserve all judgments about my clan until I visit them myself. Depending on the situation, I will either have to make more progress during the remaining 6 months promised by my mother or return immediately. Taking care of urgent matters like Smarian Proc is important for now. As the conversation continued, Qual reported that the inspection of the flying ship had concluded. Following him to the shipbuilding area prepared on the middle layer of Taiken, Jin couldn't help but marvel. The scale isn't comparable to the shipbuilding area in the Soda Desert, but anyone can recognize at a glance that Dr. Qual's shipbuilding surpasses Zippel's technological prowess at the time. Tens of thousands of gears, machines functioning so elaborately they seemed beautiful. In the center, in a spacious area prepared like an altar, the first masterpiece that Qual hadn't destroyed displayed its elegant figure. It wasn't a large ship known in the world like Kozek, Granil, and other mass-produced warships. It's small. Yes, it can embark 5 people, and the mounted firearm is just a main cannon, which is an improved version of the mass-produced Dragonlance of the Imperial family. Because of this, Qual said the firepower of the flying ship was poor, but the Dragonlance was the strongest weapon of war in the Empire until before the War of the Sword Emperor Castle. Reducing the mass-produced version of the Dragonlance without deteriorating its performance and installing it in a small ship was something only Qual could do in the world. In the first place, only Qual is capable of producing a small warship. However, the performance of the built-in protection artifact is comparable to Enya's Dragonfire Shield. It's an artifact created by Valeria and me, akin to a definitive example of magic and magical engineering at this moment. Qual's eyes turned red while explaining. How many walls of magic and magical engineering had they broken before making this? At the moment of completion, even Valeria seemed to be crying. You've worked hard, Dr. Qual. Here's a handkerchief. Damn it. I just got a speck of sawdust in my eye. Anyway, the official name of this warship is Synchronous Wavelength Tracking Spatial Jump Ship. If I define it easily in one word, you're saying it's a ship capable of instant teleportation? Yes. Moreover, this ship surpasses all the deficiencies of the transfer gates, which have now become a symbol of the ancient era. But it requires immense power, which is a challenge we will have to address. Despite Qual's credibility, it was hard to believe until experienced. Firsthand, it was that shocking. The name Valeria and I gave this ship is Red Owl. It seemed that Valeria had come up with the name on her own. It's not going to happen, but the manual is inside, so take a look in case of an emergency. Now try it. Jean, Gilly, and Valkas boarded the Red Owl's cabin with puzzled faces. Don't we need to operate it separately? The arrival and return coordinates were set to the Ghost Castle and Tychon. When the launch bay opens, just press the button in the center of the cabin. In the blink of an eye, you'll be in front of the Ghost Castle. Also, the camouflage is still under development, so when you get there, pay attention to exposure first. Camouflage? I don't know when it will be developed. Anyway, keep in mind that the day the Red Owl gets damaged, Valeria and I will kill you no matter what. Creak. When Qual opened the launch bay, Jean could see the endless sky and sea. Then, when Jean carefully pressed the button in the center of the cabin, the Red Owl enveloped itself in mana and vibrated for a moment. And the Red Owl started running with explosive acceleration. Just like the ship of the pirate King Cosmos when he was a provisional flag bearer, or faster than that. Jean and his companions were stunned by that absurd acceleration and, in an instant, felt their heads go blank and their vision darken. When they opened their eyes a few seconds later, Jean and his companions blinked as they beheld the desolate landscape of the Ghost Castle on the other side of the cabin window. Is this really happening? Is it real? Even after seeing it with their own eyes and experiencing it firsthand, it was still hard to believe it was real. Chapter 629, The Red Owl, a synchronous space jump ship tracking wavelength, was not affected by chaos particles, unlike the transfer gate. According to the manual, the space-time device built into the Red Owl operates differently from conventional transfer gates, as it uses the invisible wavelength existing in the world instead of mana for instant teleportation. I've seen previous failed works break apart during space jumps. It's hard to describe the abilities of Qual Nim and Miss Valeria, young master. Jean had already seen Zippel using the space-time device on the Gaifa Islands, but comparing the Red Owl to Zippel's technology at that time was itself an insult. It feels like entering a completely new world after 2 years and 6 months. Brrrr. Chilling screams echoed in the gloomy forest surrounding the Sword Emperor Castle. The coordinates set for the Red Owl were the camp of the Ghost Companions and mercenaries. Jean could once again realize the gravity of the situation just by seeing them camp and surrender before the Sword Emperor Castle, the headquarters of the Ghost Mercenaries. As the Red Owl slowly descended, all eyes in the camp were fixed on it. Everyone was witnessing the operation of the Red Owl for the first time. But what surprised them the most was the presence of Jean among the passengers of the Red Owl. Jean Nim. Jean, you're back. The Ghost Mercenaries greeted him, and the companions shouted his name and rushed over. Quicantel, Elisa, Kazan, Varys, Yulian, Enya, Lotta, Faye, Amela, and about 30% of the Black King's mercenaries and more than 80% of the Ghost Mercenaries. Tychon was literally focused on Smarion, leaving only the minimum force for defense. All of them had haggard faces due to the operation that had been going on for over 3 months. A terrifyingly thick chaos covers the entire forest of the Sword Emperor Castle. A non-combatant would have gone mad just being around here. The nerves throughout Jin's body were on edge, even though he didn't want to be aware of it. Others also vaguely felt that the chaos of Smarion invading the Sword Emperor Castle was immense, but it was nowhere near the level Jean recognized. This is because they don't have the same senses as Jean. Such immense power could only be properly recognized by those who were at least at the level of the Battle King. For a while, they exchanged words about each other's well-being. But given the gravity of the situation, the conversation quickly changed. I apologize for overwhelming you so soon after your return, sir. Lotta spoke in a heavy tone. The reason I showed you this place first is because this is currently the biggest and only problem of the Sword Emperor Castle. It's embarrassing to admit, but this seal could be said to threaten the existence of the Ghost Mercenary. From the moment Lotta decided to serve Jean as his sir, he felt sorry for sharing the risk of Smarion Proc. Sir Lotta, Please don't say such things. From the moment you became our comrade, this became a problem for all of us. In any case, I should apologize for abandoning my post until the situation reached this point. As Lotta lowered his head, Amala approached Jin's side. Our little cutie suffered a lot trying to manage things before you arrived, sir. We all did what we could, but with our own strength, we couldn't do anything. Fortunately, the chaos of Amala, Lotta, and Faye did not resonate with the energy of the Sword Emperor Castle. Jin took out the chaos purifier he had brought with him. It is a chaos purifier made by the brothers of the Tribe of Legends. I brought it just in case, but I don't think Sir Lotta and Faye's father can be cured with it. The chaos purifier was only effective against the infected before full invasion and bodily transformation occurred. Smarian had already deviated from that standard by the time he was sealed, and even if not, the size of the chaos itself was too large. Therefore, purification was impossible, and the only way to resolve the situation was by killing him. Jin, if you're worried about the idea of having to kill our father, don't be. We were here waiting precisely to deal with the monster that was our father. Lotta and Faye didn't have very good memories of Smarian. It was because they had endured nothing but abuse and training from a young age. Rather, the emotions evoked when thinking of their father were closer to hatred. However, they were not completely devoid of ordinary family memories. When Siren was concerned about Smarian's chaos and often visited the Sword Emperor Castle, Smarian would become a benevolent father and give sweets to the two while they sat on his lap. Although these moments were few and far between, they were undoubtedly precious childhood moments for the Proc siblings. Even if they didn't want to admit it, given their resentment towards Smarian. Rather, we think that getting rid of that monster as soon as possible is the duty of the Ghost Mercenary. It's the right thing to do for our comrades. Of course, even considering such things is a shameless request to burden you, sir. But please, I ask. Jean nodded heavily. Then, Quicantle informed Jean of the current situation. According to her, there had already been 3 chaos explosions at the Sword Emperor Castle. The first explosion caused about 30 casualties, and from the second onwards, no damage occurred thanks to the pre-expansion of the perimeter. The explosions are becoming more frequent and stronger. If this continues, there's a high chance that the damage will spread beyond the forest to the neighboring territories of Vermont. Since the Sword Emperor Castle was within Vermont's territory, Dante was already supporting the Vamal Alliance. The Knights of Hyran and Peril completely cordoned off the area. This was to prevent other major factions from exploiting the vulnerability of the Vamal Alliance. Meanwhile, Jin's companions could only wait without being able to do anything. They couldn't intervene first because the expected casualties would be too high, and they couldn't use their trump cards because they might be annihilated. This was because Talaris, Misha, Murakan, and Jean, their powerful allies, were not there. We prevented Dante Hyran from entering to subdue it alone. If the seal completely broke and they judged that the Vamal Alliance alone couldn't handle it, then Dante would have no choice but to intervene. Dante was the hope of the Empire and the ruler supported by all the people. In a situation where everything was uncertain, it was right to exclude him as much as possible from participating in the subjugation. Moreover, Dante was already busy patrolling contaminated areas within the Empire and containing major factions on his own. He didn't have spare capacity. In such a situation, if Dante decided to enter the Ghost Castle for Jean and his companions, it would inevitably lead to more deaths elsewhere. "You've done well," said Jean, looking towards the main gate of the Ghost Castle. "Smarian Proc, are you aware of my arrival?" The pervasive energy of chaos in the Ghost Castle area was growing deeper. It had begun right after Jin's arrival and, once again, only he was aware of it. As if waiting for an opponent, the chaos energy spread by Smarian was slowly focusing on Jean. Jean calmly confronted that powerful energy, and he quickly came to a conclusion. "I'll rest for a day and enter the Ghost Castle tomorrow morning." He needed some time to recover from the exhaustion and injuries sustained in the battle against Ranka. "Tomorrow?" "Yes, if the seal holds until tomorrow, or rather, if Smarian Proc waits for me until then, to be more precise. He's already in a state where he can break the seal." "What are you talking about?" As soon as I arrived, Smarion's energy started amplifying. If the seal hadn't completely lost its function, the energy couldn't have grown at such a rapid rate. The deep killing intent and hostility are all directed at me. Jin's companions didn't know if he had reached enlightenment or acquired the senses of a Genesis Knight. They only had a vague feeling that Jin had grown stronger. That's why, although they doubted Jin could kill Smarion alone despite his newfound strength, they didn't express it, because it was Jin. So what should we do? Jin scrutinized the artifacts installed in the camp. They were the artifacts he had found firsthand the day he met Qual at the cabin. They included the blue rod made for the Great Night battle, the aura disruptors, and the net, claiming to be all sorts of obstacles. Prepare for the consequences of the battle nearby. The neighboring cities may also suffer damage if the protective shield isn't well formed. And concentrate all the aura disruptors on the battlefield where Smarion and I will fight. Are you saying that those skilled enough to withstand the shockwave should keep their distance and continue using disruptors against you and Smarion? Exactly, Quicantal Nim. Naturally, such a strategy would impose some limitations on the use of aura by both Jin and Smarion. Consequently, external damage would be reduced accordingly. If Jin were an ordinary martial artist, he would never consider such a method, as Smarion could still handle chaos energy even without aura. However, Jin had shadow force and mana. I can't predict exactly how far the impact of the battle will spread, so it's undoubtedly better for both Smarion and me that our power decreases, as long as the disruptors can withstand it. Anything else? Please use all possible means to prevent damage to the Imperial lands other than the Ghost Castle. Also, keep an eye on the Red Owl to ensure it doesn't get into trouble. That's all. Noon the next day. Fortunately, Jin was able to head to the Ghost Castle after a full day's rest. He meditated all night, so he didn't have a chance to talk further with his companions. Jin classified Smarion as a target requiring his utmost concentration. There is a high chance the battle will begin as soon as I enter. So, Quicantal Nim, Valkas Nim, Lady Amala, and Enya, please be especially cautious. Yes, sir. Those 4 people were the ones closest to the battlefield and had the role of protecting the disruptors and those using them. Enya's Dragon Fire Shield and Quicantal's Divine Power of Time were the core of the protective shield. 500 disruptors were stationed near the Ghost Castle. That was more than 80% of the current disruptors possessed by the Vamal Alliance. My lord, I wish you luck. Don't worry too much. Jin turned towards Lada and Faye. They still felt uneasy about entrusting Jin with such a role, but they had a determined look to ensure Jin didn't feel more uncomfortable. If we hadn't met you, my lord, the Ghost Castle would undoubtedly have been annihilated by that monster that consumed our father, just like our mother. Please be careful, my lord. Jin patted the Proc brothers on the shoulder and headed towards the Ghost Castle. Chapter 630. As Jin approached, all kinds of energies emanating from the Ghost Castle became even more powerful. Not only Jin, but also his companions and lower-ranking members of the Phantom Mercenaries and the Black King Mercenaries could feel it. I expected Smarion Proc's energy to be strong, but is it really this intense? Will the young master be all right alone? It's hard to breathe even from this distance. Jin's companions looked at his back and thought. They had heard that Jin had turned Ranka Halovice into a living corpse as soon as he arrived, but the energy emanating from Smarion now went beyond that. Furthermore, what Smarion emitted now was not all. If it hadn't been for the preparation in Tychon, we would never have been able to handle Smarion Proc with the power we came here with in the first place. Jin's companions were astonished as they confirmed the reality of Smarion's power. If Jin had not returned from training at that moment, they did not want to imagine how many casualties the Vamal Alliance would have suffered. Jin was also glad he hadn't arrived late. I'm glad I came right away. If he had continued his training, if the Red Owl hadn't been completed, or if Smarion had broken the seal earlier, if any of this had gone wrong, surely people would have died. As Jin approached the edge of the forest, the landscape darkened. The ghost forest, eroded by chaos, looked as desolate as the Black Sea, and the imposing Ghost Castle trembled as if it would explode at any moment. Jean opened the castle door without hesitation. The chaos clinging to the door stuck to his hands like ash, but it was soon swept away by the lightning energy. In no time, Jean reached the lower level where Smarion awaited. The huge iron door covering the seal had melted into chaos and only traces remained. The seal, made by the elders of the Phantom Mercenaries with their lives, was already broken as Jean had predicted from outside. "Why don't you come out now, Smarion Proc? Yes, you must be Siren's blood." Although he had never seen Jean before, Smarion was confident. Is there any trace of reason left in him? Jean thought there might be. If only his instincts and demonization remained, Smarion would have no reason to give Jean time as if facing the opponent of his dreams. However, what remained in Smarion's consciousness was closer to blind enmity than reason, towards Siren, and towards the existence that wields shadows. It was a common trait of all chaos, aversion to shadow energy. He also has unpleasant powers. Swoosh! A crack ran through the seal from the inside, and a hand as black as coal emerged. When that hand completely tore through the seal, a sharp cry, like that of a human, pierced the ears. It was the sound of the trapped souls of the elder Phantom Mercenaries, now liberated. The spirits seemed confused and tried to escape. Trapped by Smarion, they became his prey. Smarion devoured the souls as if chewing on the raw flesh of a beast. "Before drawing my sword, let me ask you one thing. I don't think I can relax while fighting you." Jean stared at Smarion. There was no trace of anything human in his red eyes. "Outside are children, Sir Leia Proc, Faye Proc, and my companions. Do you have any intention to choose or cooperate for their sake? Why should I bother with tasteless things like them?" Sigmund and Bradamante emitted a dreadful friction sound as they came out of the sheath. Jin's eyes softened for a moment with bitterness before hardening. "Regrettable. If chaos hadn't consumed you, you might have considered it even a little." As soon as he finished responding, Jin's vision darkened. The chaos harbored by Smarion exploded. The explosion that began on the lowest level of the basement destroyed the entire ghost castle in the blink of an eye. An earthquake spread outside, and those waiting reinforced their shields, widening their eyes. It was over 1,500 meters away from where they were, but the shockwave that hit the shield was fierce and relentless. Jean bore the brunt at close range. Surprisingly, amidst the aftermath of the explosion and the debris of the shattered castle, Jean appeared unscathed. Jean unleashed his shadow blade to counter all the chaos crashing down on him. Amidst the explosion, Jin's cold, shining eyes followed Smarion's movements. Smarion also formed his dual blades with chaos to confront Jean. The ground collapsed. Due to being eroded by chaos for so long, the ghost castle could not withstand the slightest blow and crumbled into dust. The Proc brothers and the members of the Phantom Mercenaries did not even sigh after witnessing the ghost castle collapse. They thought it was an insult to Jean, who was fighting for them. The erupting chaos naturally created a battlefield for the two. The ground sank in a huge semicircle, leaving the bodies of the two in the air for a moment, and before their feet could even touch the ground again, they wielded their swords against each other. The force of shadows, chaos, and the three black swords intertwined dizzyingly. Every time chaos erupted, the curtain of shadowy force countered it, and with each clash of swords, the cracks in the ground widened ceaselessly. In just a few seconds, the unfolding destruction seemed unbelievable. Battle begins. We're also entering. Prepare to open the disruptors. At Quicantel's command, the Vamal Alliance headed to the battlefield in perfect order. They couldn't enter quickly. It was because shadow energy, chaos, aura, mana, and lightning energy surged like a storm. I have been waiting for someone like you, of the same kind as Siren Runcandle. I will devour you and find him. Boom! The endless chaos swept the ground, distorting space. If left alone, Smarion would not tire even after wiping the area off the map. The sheer size of his pure power clearly surpassed Jin's. As expected, even if there's consciousness left, in the end, he's just a demonic killer. What makes a martial artist strong is not the total amount of force, but the enlightenment of the level and martial arts acquired through fighting. And Sumerian forgot most of the enlightenment he had gained during his time as a human. Bang! Jin blocked Sumerian's twin swords, which had fallen like lightning. The twin swords created by chaos shattered and scratched Sumerian's neck. The fragments of the broken twin swords changed like scattered arrows of KO and attacked Jin. One grazed Jin's cheek, but in the gap, Jin pierced through Sumerian's chest. Black blood splattered, and Sumerian scattered black chaos as he increased the distance. Hundreds of chaos projectiles falling in sphere form tore through the shadow and aura force shields. The chaos piercing through and exiting the battlefield hit the entire forest. It was more or less when Jin's companions entered the battlefield and saw Jin and Sumerian fighting for the first time. Is that our lord? This immense power is not giving the lord a proper hit. By the way, it was mostly Sumerian's power, not Jin's, that hindered their entry. Because of this, Jin's companions thought Jin might be pushed back. But it was far from reality. If there existed in the world a ship that could not be tossed even in the raging waves and storm, it would resemble Jin, standing firm against Sumerian's onslaught. The difference in caliber was evident. At that moment, Jin's companions could feel the fact that he had ascended to the ranks of transcendence beyond 10 stars. Just by looking at Jin's back, which began to look like a distant, they felt as if a giant were standing right in front of their noses. His opponent was the highest-level chaos-infected and possibly the strongest phantom leader of all time. Despite facing such a legendary figure and the overwhelming spatial control exerted by Sumerian with his immense power, Jin's companions did not think for a moment that Jin would lose. In reality, Jin's task was not to win the battle. The key lay in how much external damage he could minimize. That was the crux of the matter. The outcome was practically decided the moment they drew their swords. What mattered was achieving maximum results with minimal damage. That's why Jin asked before the battle began. You can't defeat me. How about surrendering? Deploy the disruptors. At Quickentel's shout, more than 500 blue bars shot up into the air. The disruptors floated in a circle and connected via mana. And the next moment, the phenomenon that blocked the aura of the two, who had been stirring up the battlefield all along, occurred. There's no need to doubt Dr. Qual's things. If this also works for me, it won't be different from rat poison for the martial artist I have below. Of course, concentrating 500 disruptors on just 2 individuals was only possible thanks to Jin's skill. The size of the aura released by Jin and Sumerian was significantly reduced, and the speed at which the forests and the ground were being destroyed decreased. Sumerian tried to intensify the chaos even further, but Jin heightened his senses and dodged the attacks. The sense of handling aura. But not even 500 would be enough to hinder the functioning of the aura of those who transcended. Before the disruptors deployed, in Jin's illuminated heart, a much larger aura than before was already forming. It was something that Sumerian, soaked in demonic energy, could never achieve. As things stand, thanks to that, it's now easier for me to protect my companions. Sword of Legends. 4th Battle King Technique. Guardian Brothers. While Jin's light heart emitted a glow, lightning bolts fell upon the heads of his companions. Instead of dealing a blow, the lightning bolts turned into a protective shield that shielded the target. All forces of the Vamal Alliance nearby were protected by the Guardian Brothers. Sumerian's chaos, which had pierced through the aura shield and the dragon's fire shield, could not penetrate the dense blue shield. Jin gripped Bradamanti tightly again and fixed his gaze on Sumerian. Now you can't kill anyone, Sumerian proc.